The Seahawks have a new exciting quarterback entering the mix in Jalen Milroe. What are some realistic expectations for him coming to the Pacific Northwest? We're going to be chatting with his position coach from Alabama here on our latest Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12s. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in, whether you're in Renton, Washington, or down in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. And we're excited to continue our NFL Draft Coaches Series coming from Alabama. Nick Sheridan, quarterback coach. Coach, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be here, and anything I can do to brag on Jalens. So excited to be here.
First off, congratulations on him getting drafted. I know that anytime you can have a QB drafted in the NFL, that's an exciting time. But you had a really interesting situation going from Washington, where you had a Heisman finalist in Michael Penix Jr., who you had worked with at Indiana. Then you go to Alabama and you get the opportunity to work with Jalen Milroe, who got Heisman votes in 2023. Obviously, you'd already seen what this kid is capable of from an outside perspective, with him being one of the best quarterbacks in the country that year. But what were some things that jumped out to you? What were your impressions when you first got your chance to meet with Jalen and start working with him last season?
Well, I think the things that really just stand out from the very beginning is just who he is as a person and his commitment level, his work ethic. I just think he's somebody that, he loves football and he works really hard at it. And, he cares about, doing his part and doing the very best he can do, but he also cares about his teammates, and he wants the team to do well. He wants to win. And I think, those characteristics, when you think about different players that you've been fortunate to be around, the great ones have a lot of things in common. They may, be different stylistically, or certain things that they do on the field are different. But I think from a foundational standpoint, Jalen was just wired, the way that all great players are. And his commitment level was outstanding. He's obviously a very talented player. He's very explosive, both as a passer and as a runner. And but the thing that always jumps out is just his makeup, his commitment level, his work ethic. I think it's as good as you could, ever ask for in a coach. Just his day-to-day operation, his discipline. He's excellent in that area for sure.
When you look at the statistics last year, obviously he took a little bit of a step back from the 2023 season, at least from a passing standpoint. And there was a little bit more adversity that he and the Crimson Tide had to deal with this past season than what they did in some of the previous years that Jalen was on campus. How did you see him handle that adversity, both from an individual standpoint and from a team standpoint?
I thought he handled it great. I don't think he ever flinched. And I think anybody that is familiar with what the NFL entails and what that looks like week to week for a professional football player, I think everybody knows that there's ups and downs, that come with that come with the season, come with being in the NFL. And I think, to a credit to Jay Mill, in his time as a starter, he never lost 2 games in a row. That never happened. I think he always bounced back anytime we had any adversity. I just think that's who he is. That's who his family is. That's who his parents are. He's just a really hard-working, hard-charging kid that, puts his best foot forward each and every day. He learns, he grows. He loves the preparation. And so I just thought, in the times that there was adversity for our team, I thought he was rock solid. And I think that's a testament to who he is as a competitor, but even more so who he is as a person.
There aren't many quarterbacks that come into the NFL running in the high 4.3s in the 40-yard dash. It's well documented, the rare athleticism that he brings to the table. And there's big throws aplenty on his film, clutch throws. But when you look at Jalen's skill set coming into the NFL, where are some areas where you feel like he is underappreciated, or maybe he's not getting quite enough credit in terms of the skills that he brings to the table coming into the NFL?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure on all the narratives that are out there relative to what he gets credit for or doesn't. I just know that here's a guy that was super productive in college. Relative to touchdown production. I mean, the guy had accounted for over 70 touchdowns in 2 seasons. I think that's pretty remarkable. He's a winner. He's a champion. I just think that he accomplished so much in such a short amount of time. And I think when you stack up what he was able to do in a 2-year span as a starter, I think it's comparable to anybody that was in the draft, and I think there's things that he can do in his game that you'd be hard pressed to find anybody else that was in this draft that's capable of doing, and I think what's so important, in any time, this is how I always feel as a college coach when you have a player that's being evaluated in the NFL. You just want them to go to the right fit where there's a vision for them, a belief in them, to help them kind of on their journey and their transition in the NFL. And it certainly sounds like he's found that. And it certainly sounds like the Hawks are super excited about him. And I'm thrilled for him as well, because I don't think if you watch the last 2 years for him as a starter, I don't think there's anything that he can't do. I think he's displayed the ability to execute all different types of plays, running and throwing. And so if you watch enough film and really evaluate him, you've seen a lot of amazing plays and a lot of production. And it's pretty incredible. And he deserves the most credit for that. That's for sure.
I've really enjoyed getting to chat with Jalen a few times since the draft. And one thing that jumped out to me in particular, Coach, is his willingness to dive into the areas of his game that he knows he has room to grow. And he's very candid about that. And he was discussing with me the mechanics in his lower body. That was the area that he felt like he had the most room to develop coming into the NFL. In terms of mechanics, what did you see on that front as his quarterback coach? Where do you feel like he is strong in that regard? And where specifically, when it comes to the lower body, what are some things you see that maybe he needs to polish up a little bit before he has an opportunity to play on Sundays?
Well, I think every player is a little bit different, and I think everyone's journey is different, and I think, his acknowledgement of things that he wants to improve on, I think, is what makes him unique and special. I think that's the piece of being a football player that he loves. He loves the challenge that, is going to be there for him for, the rest of his career, is that he's always going to be searching for those inches and those margins to try to improve. When specifically to footwork, when you're transitioning to the NFL, every system has different intricacies of what they're going to ask the quarterback to do. There's base fundamentals that transfer over no matter what offense that you're going to play in, but certainly with their staff and what they're asking the quarterback to do, and also the rules of the game in the NFL, the spacing is slightly different. The rules are slightly different than they are in college. And so I think that natural development will take place as he continues to learn what they're going to ask him to do relative to a footwork standpoint and what they're going to do in the timing and the spacing in their pass game. But certainly he has the capability of doing it all. He's extremely athletic. He's very powerful as a passer. I just think that's just a credit to him. I think every player, if they're really honest about it, there's always certain things that they want to improve on. And I think that's the markings of a great player and someone that's trying to be their very best. And so he's on that mission. I know he's going to be continued, to go down that journey the rest of his career. And I know that's why he loves that chase so much.
You've mentioned all the tools that he brings to the table, and it's not just the physical tools, the leadership intangibles that he brings to the table, but looking at his journey now to Seattle, joining Clint Kubiak's offense, running a Shanahan-style scheme. They're going to be doing the wide zone in the run game, going to have some quick throws in the passing game, a lot of under center work. If you were advising Clint Kubiak how to maximize Jalen Milroe's talents, what would you tell him? And from a rookie year standpoint, what are your thoughts on implementing him as a package player? And do you think that that's something that is going to help his development if he can get a little bit of game action rotating into the lineup in some of those sub packages?
Well, I would just start by saying I'm not going to be giving Clint any types of tips. He's an excellent coach, and I know they have a system that they believe in. And so I think they're going to do just fine of implementing him and what they see fit to try to, get first downs and score points. And so I think any modern offense, you have to be good at a lot of things. If you're only good at one thing, people can stop it. And so the more you do well, the harder you are to defend. I think that's at any level, whether it's in college or in the NFL. And so, you're always trying to And that's true for units, offensive units, but it's also true for players. And so the more you can do well as a player, I think, the harder you are to stop. And so I think that's, as you onboard any type of player, whether it's a high school player for us or, a college player for them, you're always trying to identify the strengths that they have. You're always trying to help them improve on areas that they need improvement on. And that's an ongoing journey. As far as specific packages, they have a great staff there. I know they'll do a great job of finding, the different things that they need to try to help them win. I know that's always on the forefront of any coach's mind, is what can, best position our team to win. And so I certainly think that there's things that Jalen possesses, just like there are, that can help them win. And just like it is for any rookie that gets drafted, that's why they're drafted. That's why the organization selects them. And so the thing I know about Jay Mill is he'll be prepared. I know he'll be willing to contribute to the team in whatever way they ask him to. And I know he's excited about the opportunity to continue to learn and grow.
Putting you on the spot just a little bit here, we've talked so much about his strengths in his game, the areas that he wants to improve upon. When you look at where he's at coming into the NFL, what traits do you think he has right now that are NFL ready? And where are some areas that you think he's going to need the most seasoning? And look, he's in a great situation with Sam Darnold and Drew Lock in front of him where they can take time developing. But what areas do you see him being pro ready, and what are the areas he's got to bridge the gap a little bit to be able to be ready to start on Sundays?
Well, I think the things that he's pro ready is his discipline and his work habits, and I think that separates a lot of rookies, is just his rhythm and routine on a day-to-day basis, I think, is outstanding. And I think the habits that he's created for himself and his preparation, I think, puts him in as good of a position as any rookie, to try to learn and grasp what they're asking him to do and be prepared to go execute, obviously in practice. And then if his number's called, during the game. And I think, like any rookie, I don't think this makes Jalen unique to any other rookie. The adjustment that you go through and just learning an offense and what are the intricacies of it, and the footwork, the timing, the different route details that you can play with timing and anticipation. I think that'll be a journey for him, like it is for any rookie quarterback. I don't think that makes him unique. And so I think obviously the speed of the game continues to speed up. The windows get smaller. And so the fine details continue to be emphasized, just like they are, at Alabama and against SEC competition, but certainly the speed and the windows are, it's faster, and the windows are even a little bit smaller in the NFL, as we all know. So I think that's a natural, just growth process for him, just like it is for any rookie quarterback.
I put every coach on the spot with this question to cap things off. And again, I greatly appreciate the chance to speak with you. What is the best story that you can give us on Jalen Milroe? And maybe it's not one specific story, but what is something that you remember most from your time getting to work with him this past year that maybe would be endearing him to the Seahawk faithful even more than he already is at this point?
That's a great question. I think the things that I remember the most about him is just his tireless work ethic. I mean, obviously the explosive plays and all the production and the competitive nature that he has on game day and in practice and in preparation. I think, just turn the film on and you can see all the incredible moments that he's had. But I know the guy to be the first one in the building. We're talking 4:30, 4:45, 5 o'clock in the morning. The meticulous notes that he takes in his preparation, and there's nobody that's going to put in more time than he will. There's no one that's going to care more than he will. And, that's been instilled in him from his parents. He's got great parents that love him. They've raised him to be a great person, a hardworking person that cares not only about himself, but those around him. And so those are the things that I remember the most. And obviously the smile. He's got a great smile for sure. So he's just a great kid, and I'm super excited for him. He's earned it, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for him.
I know the Seahawks feel the same way. There's a lot of excitement in that building, and again, this is a great opportunity for him as a third rounder to not feel like he's getting forced right into the lineup. They have a situation where they can develop him properly and make sure that he's ready for when the time comes. Again, a special thanks to you, Coach Sheridan. Thanks for jumping on, and best of luck to you this upcoming season and on the recruiting trail right now. I know right now is a really busy time period for all the coaches out there in college football.
Thanks, Corbin. I appreciate you having me.
That's Coach Nick Sheridan from Alabama diving into Jalen Milroe. Coming up here shortly, we are going to have another episode dropping. Another Alabama coach is going to be joining the mix. We are going to have Brian Ellis, the tight end coach for the Crimson Tide. He will be joining me on a second episode that's going to be coming up here at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time. So make sure that you are clicking on the link and listening in. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you here shortly. Go Hawks.